Stealth games are not exactly a dime a dozen these days, but thankfully many modern games have stealth sections or just flesh out stealth mechanics. So here are all of the stealth games, or games with good stealth in it, worth paying attention to in 2019. Starting off with number 10, we're going to talk about something a little different. We're going to start off on a lighter note with Peekaboo. This, at first glance, doesn't exactly seem like a stealth game, but essentially what it is a multiplayer prop hunt game. A prop hunt game, for those of you that don't know, is centered around like one team being hunters, the other team being objects. So in this game, if you're on the object side or the side of hiding in this hide and seek game, you can transform yourself into any object in the game, in the world, and fly yourself around and plop yourself down and just kind of disguise yourself and hope you don't get noticed. The other team is, of course, trying to hunt down and trying to spot you. Peekaboo isn't like by any means the first game to come up with this concept, but their implementation here is really interesting, and the game has a nice different look to it for this sort of thing. And playing as a mimic and trying to hide from other players is really tense and exciting. And while, it's not on paper a stealth game, that's stealthy as far as I'm concerned. Plus, we wanted to just highlight some different things on this list, some stuff that wouldn't have been on your radar. Peekaboo is a great example for that. It's still kind of an early access. It's definitely having some issues here and there. It's definitely not a perfect game. It's still struggling to find its player base, but from what we've seen of it, we really like it. It's kind of one of the better examples of a hide and seek game you can play on 2019 on PC right now. Next at number 9, since we are talking about the more alternative games, we have the Blackout Club. This is another co-op multiplayer game, but it's got a horror focus, and you're a group of teenagers, and you run around these procedurally generated missions and areas with a little bit of a Left 4 Dead style structure, but the catch here is that the enemy hunting you, the enemy that you're hiding from, you can only really see with your eyes closed. You can, of course, hide and stealth and sneak around, but you have some tools at your disposal as well, like cell phones, drones, noisemakers, grappling hooks. It's definitely rough around the edges, but the idea of this shape hunting you when you make too much noise and the fact that you can't see it is really cool. And honestly, since a lot of co-op games have stealth elements in them and they feel kind of half-assed, this is more of the real thing. This is just a good experience, and if you're into stuff like Dead by Daylight, this is worth checking out. But next at number 8, we got a bit more of a mainstream game with Days Gone. Now, of course, you're saying Days Gone is not really a stealth game first and foremost, but that's how a lot of games are in 2019, and Days Gone does have some decent stealth, specifically surrounding the idea of avoiding zombies, or in this case, freakers, and all of the human elements, of which there are many factions and they're all crazy and trying to kill you. Days Gone relies a lot on the simple stealth of hiding in the bushes and, throwing a distraction like a bottle or something like that. But it's satisfying, it's simple, and it works, and the biggest thing, and why we're including it on this list, is that it actually gives you that feel of tension, of not wanting to be seen. And the human enemies are one thing, but it's really about hiding from all of the freakers. The giant roaming hordes can be pretty anxiety-inducing, and you're gonna want to hide behind a tree or hide behind a bush. So while the game is very action-focused at times, the stealth sequences we enjoyed, for the most part, except for the ones when you're hiding from the scientist. Those were annoying. But otherwise, we were surprised by the amount of stealth that the game did have, and we wanted to mention it here. Next at number 7, we have Streets of Rogue. This is a very unique game, and I'm just gonna use their words the way they describe it. It's Nuclear Throne meets Deus Ex, mixed with some of the crazy stuff from Grand Theft Auto. So this is a top-down roguelite, but it kind of gives you a bit more of the feel of some older PC games where you have tons of options like RPG stuff, and one of the big options and ways to tackle a level is with stealth. And even though the look of the game is relatively simple, stealth here is really fun. You can play as a soldier who guns his way around, but you can play as a sneaky doctor who uses potions and stuff to his advantage, or you can go the other route of more social stealth and play as the bartender who can basically talk his way through things, and we appreciate that stuff. It takes place in a procedurally generated city, so everything seems to be pretty interesting, and we want to point out is that you can have a no-kill run in this game, which is something that is huge to stealth players. The artificial intelligence is also pretty impressive, and you can do it 4-player co-op. There's a lot of options here on how to play. Stealth is only one of them, but we thought it was worth pointing out because it's a fun way to play. It has a lot of thought put into it, and again, we're putting different games on your radar here. Because next at number 6, speaking of different, we have a game called Unholy. Now, as of the time of making this video, this hasn't seen a full release yet, but we're putting it on your radar because the concept seems pretty unique and interesting, and essentially Unholy is like a gross, nasty, gritty horror game with the idea of course, sneaking around and avoiding your big scary enemies, but also using a sort of social system where you can exploit a caste system where there's like a hierarchy of different classes of people, and you can disguise yourself and impersonate someone in a different level of this social class. You can also apparently kill people, that's an approach, but it seems like most of the emphasis is on that type of social stealth where you can talk and impersonate your way through things, or just regular old-fashioned stealth where you just sneak past guards. The city you creep around in is called Fear. The visual style is, like I said, gross and gritty, evocative of a lot of other horror and like fantasy games we've been seeing. It does seem like it's kind of dangerously teetering on the concept of becoming something like that game Agony, where it's focused more on all gore, visual design to 11, but no real substance. Hopefully Unholy doesn't go that route, because some of the ideas here they're expressing are really interesting. It is dropping in 2019, so it seems like it's something to keep your eye on. Next at number 5, we have The Outer Worlds. This is an upcoming RPG, a game that we've been talking about quite a bit here, but today we're tackling it from another avenue because it's a big old Obsidian RPG, very similar to their previous work like Fallout New Vegas, where there are tons of options and ways to tackle everything. And here they turn it up to 11 because there's a lot of stealth you can do. You can, of course, sneak around the old-fashioned way, use technology to cloak yourself, just hide in general, distract enemies, stuff like that. But then, of course, there is the more social element. Improve your stats to talk your way through situations, to lie, to impersonate. The game will also have a full disguise system where you can essentially infiltrate an area disguised as someone with a suspicion meter that you have to manage and make sure you don't get caught. If you're good enough and someone does catch you and call you out, if stats allow it, you can talk your way out of the situation and continue to go along and just hope you don't blow it again. Think of it kind of like a 3-strike system. From what we've seen and what we've gotten our hands on with the game, that stuff has been incredibly compelling, and we love RPG style stealth where it's not just essentially, can you sneak up behind a guard and snap his neck? There's just a lot more going on, you know? That's the stuff we've been loving, so we wanted to point it out here. The Outer Worlds looks like it's gonna have tons of it and tons of other options, and thankfully, that's dropping on October 25th, 2019. Now next at number 4, we have Death Stranding. A weird game to include on the list, but I think it was worth talking about. It's especially interesting because our Lord and Savior Hideo Kojima, the creator of this game and Metal Gear Solid, said specifically, no, Death Stranding is not a stealth game. And like, that's cool, we totally get it, but we wanted to point it out because it does have stealth elements, at least judging from what we have seen in the more recent gameplay trailer. You can hide in bushes, guards have a little bit of like a detection system if they spot you. We're just curious to see where this goes, how much it focuses on action and how much it focuses on stealth and story. Kojima has stated that it falls somewhere in between, but like other games on this list, if it has good solid stealth elements that are worth pointing out, we wanted to talk about it, and we're hoping that Death Stranding does have that, because judging from what we have seen so far, the gameplay could be pretty compelling, as weird as it is. I don't know, it's a weird one to include, but I wanted to talk about it. Some of you guys are gonna think this is weird. It's a tricky year for stealth games, there's not a ton, so hey. But next at number 3, we have a little game you may not have heard of called Phantom Covert Ops. This is a VR game, so slow your roll, but it's a really exciting one. We've gotten our hands on this one and we've gotten to play this one behind the scenes, and essentially what it does is take the concept of a horror VR game where horror and hiding from things is even scarier and more tense when you're in VR, and they made a stealth game. And believe it or not, hiding from enemies in VR is just as scary as hiding from scary bad guys in VR. So the entire game, you are a sneaky stealth dude with a bunch of equipment, paddling your way through the environment in a military-style covert kayak. Yeah, I know it sounds really stupid like that you paddle your way through the whole game, but when you play it, it makes sense. Floating through a creepy river and hiding in the grass while a patrol boat goes by, then taking out your sniper rifle and shooting out a spotlight, and then slipping through a catwalk while 2 enemies search for you with flashlights is really, really exhilarating and cooler than you'd expect. Phantom Covert Ops looks like it's pure, straight-up stealth, so we're happy to talk about it. Even though it is a VR game, it looks like a damn good stealth game, and we love VR, so the combination of the two makes this one of our most anticipated, to be honest. It is slated for 2019. We hope it doesn't get moved because the game seems really, really cool and we want to play it now. So yeah, maybe keep that on your radar. Because over at number 2, coming down to the end, we have A Plague Tale: Innocence. This was an incredible story-focused single-player narrative that released earlier this year, and we're talking about it here because a majority of the game relies on stealth. You play as Amicia, tasked with escorting her brother Hugo through a medieval France stricken by an awful, nasty, gross plague. You engage in direct combat occasionally, but you're just a weak teenager, so there's not much you can do, so the majority of the time you're sneaking around, throwing rocks, breaking jars, doing stuff like that for distractions, but eventually using a couple more gadgets elements that kind of spice things up. And the game does a really good job of making you feel like a helpless young person because the enemies are large adults and you feel it. You're sneaking around big scary guards and knights in shining armor, and it can get pretty intense, especially considering you're escorting the little guy Hugo, who gets very nervous in these situations, so you need to make sure you don't leave him behind or else he'll freak out and alert the guards to your presence. Then of course you're also avoiding and tiptoeing around giant swarming hordes of plague-infected rats. There's a lot of things to avoid in this game, and I think A Plague Tale: Innocence does a lot of good things with the stealth options. Considering it is a game that was definitely developed on a budget, the story, the stealth gameplay, and everything in between is really great, and we think it's like the sleeper hit of the year. This one is a game you should not miss. It's out on all the major platforms, and you should check it out. But finally, down at number 1, another unconventional recommendation. It's a bit of a hybrid of gameplay elements. It's Secre, Shadows Die Twice, a game from Software, developers known for stuff like Bloodborne and Dark Souls, and here their approach is different because while some gameplay elements are similar, it's very different, and there's a lot of emphasis on stealth. Now, this isn't the type of game where you can just stealth your way through the entire game. It doesn't work like that, but it is a side element that is very compelling and can give you the upper hand in fights. It's the perfect way to kind of whittle out a tough environment or a tough battlefield by taking out the smaller enemies first through hiding in the bushes, using distractions, and sticking up high and using your grappling hook. There's a lot of ways to stay ahead of your enemy and observe them before moving in and attacking. Not to mention a couple of areas where the more challenging enemies can be whittled down by half their health by stealth attacking them first. We actually think that stealth mechanics are a really good thing for From Software, and they should stick with it, because if they made a full stealth game, it would be incredible. Thankfully, Secre takes some of the best elements from stuff like Tenchu Stealth Assassins and really brings it into the 21st century with a little bit of a From Software and Dark Souls style vibe of gameplay. And especially thanks to the game being so damn challenging, the stealth is tense. Hiding in a bush or creeping around on a rooftop, knowing that your life depends on it, makes the stealth that much better and really, really great. But before we finish up, we got some bonus games for you as well. We have Sniper Elite VR apparently releasing this year. Sniper Elite games are great for sneaking around, finding the right spot, and sniping out your enemies, and we hope playing it in VR is just as great. We also have Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts, a bit of a spin-off from the Ghost Warrior series. And we gotta mention that it released this year, and it's got some good stealth despite its shortcomings. Assassin's Creed 3 has been remastered, so check that out. Those are the stealth games we think are worth keeping an eye on here in 2019. Like I said, it's been a weird year for stealth games, but thankfully lots of games have stealth elements, so here's the ones you should pay attention to. So with that, we want to know what you guys are playing and what you're looking forward to in terms of stealth action, any sort of stealth hybrid. Let's hear it. Of course, if you got anything else for us at all, be sure to let us know in the comments. And if you like this video and maybe learned about a new game, clicking the like button is the best way you can help us out. We'd really appreciate that. And if you're new, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.